Widowed millionaire takes his blind daughter to the zoo until a black nanny changes their life. A wealthy man, shattered by the loss of his wife, tries to raise his blind daughter alone. But one day, at the zoo, a stranger appears, a black woman whose simple kindness will not only change his daughter's life, but awaken something in his heart he thought was gone forever. Adrian Cole had once been the kind of man who could silence a boardroom with a single glance. A millionaire by his mid-30s, he built his empire with precision, logic, and a relentless work ethic. But now at 42, Adrian often found himself lost in silence, not the commanding kind, but the heavy kind that follows loss. His wife, Elena, had passed away 2 years ago in a tragic accident, leaving him to raise their only daughter alone. Her name was Clara. She was 8 years old, bright as the sun, with laughter that used to light up every corner of their mansion. But Clara was also blind. Born with a rare condition, she had never once seen her father's face or the sky above her. Adrian used to worry about her blindness, but Elena had been the one to remind him. Clara sees with her heart, Adrian. Don't forget that. Now, without Elena, Adrian was trying but failing to keep his daughter's heart full of joy. He gave her tutors, music lessons, even voice-activated technology, but he knew nothing could replace a mother's warmth. And perhaps nothing could replace the warmth that Adrian himself had buried under years of grief. One Saturday morning, Clara tugged at her father's sleeve during breakfast. "Daddy, can we go to the zoo today?" she asked softly. Adrian hesitated. The zoo, crowds, noise, stares. He hated the idea of people whispering about his daughter's blindness, or worse, whispering about how Adrian Cole, the millionaire, looked so utterly lost without his wife. But Clara's face lit up in a way he hadn't seen in months, and so he said yes. The zoo was bustling that day, full of families, couples, and laughing children. Adrian walked beside Clara, carefully guiding her hand. She leaned close to the enclosures, listening to the sounds she couldn't see. When the lions roared, her lips curved into a delighted smile. When the monkeys screeched, she burst into giggles. For the first time in so long, Adrian felt the faint echo of joy. But then, as they approached the giraffe enclosure, something happened. A woman stood near the fence, guiding a group of children who weren't her own. She spoke with patience, her voice melodic, painting pictures of the animals for the children through words alone. "See how tall the giraffe stands? Imagine the longest ladder you've ever seen. Its neck is even longer, and its tongue, purple, like grape candy." Clara tilted her head. She couldn't see, but she could feel the woman's words. She tugged at Adrian's sleeve again. "Daddy, who is that lady?" Adrian followed his daughter's gaze, though Clara couldn't see it. The woman was tall, graceful, her skin deep and radiant against the sunlight. She wore a simple white blouse tucked into navy pants, nothing flashy, but she carried herself with quiet confidence. "That's someone teaching the children," Adrian replied. But Clara, bold in her innocence, slipped from her father's side and walked toward the black woman. Adrian panicked and followed quickly, but Clara had already spoken. "Excuse me, will you tell me what the giraffes look like too?" The black woman turned, surprised. Then her eyes softened when she noticed Clara's white cane. She crouched to Clara's level. "Of course, sweetheart. Would you like me to describe them for you?" Clara nodded eagerly. Adrian stood a step away, conflicted. He was always careful about strangers approaching his daughter. But there was something about this black woman, something steady, kind, that held him still. The black woman introduced herself. "My name is Naomi. What's yours?" "I'm Clara," she beamed, "and this is my dad." Naomi looked up at Adrian then, her gaze meeting him. And for the first time in 2 years, Adrian felt seen, not as the widowed millionaire, not as the man who had failed to hold his family together, but simply as a father doing his best. Naomi didn't just describe the giraffes to Clara. She painted them so vividly that even Adrian, who could see them clearly, found himself listening. "Imagine," Naomi said gently, her voice a melody, "a creature so tall that even the trees bow to feed it. Its eyes are soft, full of wisdom, and when it leans down, it moves as though the whole world slows for it." Clara reached out her hand, though she couldn't see. Naomi carefully guided her little palm to the railing, close enough to feel the vibrations when the giraffe bent its neck to chew. Clara gasped and laughed with joy. Adrian watched in silence. His daughter was glowing. And for once, Adrian wasn't the one responsible for that smile. A stranger was. After the giraffes, Clara refused to leave Naomi's side. Naomi held her hand gently, walking slowly, describing every sound, every movement in ways Clara could understand. From the flamingos to the roaring lions, Naomi made the invisible world visible. Adrian walked behind them, conflicted. A part of him felt relieved that someone else understood how to bring Clara joy. Another part of him, the part wrapped in grief and pride, whispered that he was failing as a father. When they reached the elephant enclosure, Clara squeezed Naomi's hand. "Naomi, do you come here every day?" Naomi smiled. "Not every day, sweetheart, but I work with children who can't always see the world the way others do. I bring them here sometimes so they can hear and feel the world instead." Clara's face lit up even brighter. "Can you teach me too? Daddy, can Naomi come with us?" Adrian froze. Naomi glanced at him, waiting. Her eyes didn't demand, they simply asked. And for reasons Adrian couldn't explain, he found himself nodding. "Only if Naomi wants to," he said carefully. Naomi smiled warmly. "I'd be honored." As the day went on, Adrian found himself watching Naomi more than the animals. She had a way of crouching to Clara's level, speaking to her with respect rather than pity. She laughed easily, and when Clara clung to her, Naomi held her with a tenderness that made Adrian's chest ache. Not with grief this time, but with something he hadn't felt in years. By the time they left the zoo, Clara was humming happily, holding Naomi's hand as if she had known her forever. At the parking lot, Adrian finally spoke directly to her. "Naomi, thank you. You didn't have to spend your whole day with us." Naomi shook her head. "Sometimes the smallest days leave the biggest marks, Mr. Cole." He noticed the way she called him Mr. Cole. Professional, respectful. But when she smiled, it reached her eyes, and something told him that behind her gentle composure was a black woman who had known her share of struggles, too. As she turned to leave, Clara tugged on her father's coat. "Daddy, can Naomi come visit us again?" Adrian hesitated, then looked at Naomi. "Would you perhaps consider helping us as Clara's nanny?" Naomi blinked, surprised. She hadn't expected this, but Clara's hopeful face made it hard to say no. "I'd be glad to," she said softly. And just like that, a single day at the zoo had planted the seed of something none of them expected. Naomi arrived at the Cole mansion a week later, clutching a modest handbag and her nerves. The sprawling estate loomed before her like a castle. Glass walls, polished gardens, a fountain that sparkled under the afternoon sun. She had seen wealth before, but never so overwhelming. The butler, an older gentleman named Harris, opened the door with polite formality. "You must be Miss Naomi." "Yes," she said softly. Before Harris could finish his greeting, Clara came running down the marble stairs, her cane tapping rhythmically against the steps. "Naomi! You came!" she squealed, throwing her arms around Naomi's waist. Naomi laughed, bending to hug her. "Of course I did. I promised, didn't I?" Adrian appeared moments later at the top of the stairs, his presence commanding even in silence. He descended slowly, dressed neatly in a crisp suit, though it was a Saturday. His face softened only when his gaze fell on Clara, and briefly when it flicked to Naomi. "Welcome," he said, his voice low but warm. "I hope you'll find yourself comfortable here." Naomi smiled faintly. "Thank you, Mr. Cole. I'll do my best." Naomi's first day was filled with small, tender moments. She guided Clara through piano practice, teaching her to feel the rhythm with her fingertips. She read books aloud, stopping to let Clara finish the sentences she had memorized. She even helped Clara paint, describing colors as feelings so the little girl could see through emotion. Adrian watched from a distance at first, but as the hours passed, he found himself lingering at doorways, drawn in by the laughter echoing through rooms that had once felt like mausoleums of silence. For months after his wife's passing, Clara had withdrawn. She rarely smiled, rarely played. Adrian tried everything: therapy, tutors, expensive programs, but nothing reached her. And now, here was Naomi. A black woman with no wealth, no privilege, yet she unlocked Clara's joy as though she had carried the key all along. That evening, Harris had set the long mahogany dining table. Adrian sat at the head, Clara to his left, Naomi to his right. The room, lit by a crystal chandelier, seemed intimidatingly formal for Naomi, but Clara broke the stiffness with her chatter. "Naomi, did you know elephants can swim? Daddy didn't believe me, but I told him." Naomi laughed. "Yes, Clara, you're right. They use their trunks like snorkels." Adrian arched his brow. Seems I've been outnumbered. Naomi glanced at him playfully. Well, sometimes children know more than grown men. The remark slipped out before she could stop it. For a heartbeat, she worried she'd been too bold. But to her surprise, Adrian's lips twitched into the faintest smile. That night, after Clara had gone to bed, Adrian lingered in his study, staring at a photo of his late wife. His heart ached, as it always did. But tonight, it ached differently. For the first time, he wondered if opening his heart again even just a little was possible. He thought of Naomi's laughter, the way she leaned close when guiding Clara, the compassion that radiated from her every gesture. Shaking his head, he muttered, "She's just the nanny." But deep down, he knew it wasn't that simple. Morning sunlight filtered through Clara's room as Naomi carefully braided the little girl's hair. Clara sat cross-legged on her bed, humming softly while her cane rested against the nightstand. "Naomi," Clara asked suddenly, "do you think I'll ever see again?" Naomi paused, her fingers tightening around a braid. She knew the medical reports Adrian had shown her doctors weren't hopeful. But Clara's innocence left no room for harsh truths. "Sweetheart," Naomi whispered, pressing her cheek against Clara's head, "you already see more than most people. You see with your heart, and that kind of vision is the strongest there is." Clara smiled. "That's what you always say." "Yes," Naomi replied, brushing a hand over Clara's hair, "because it's true." At the doorway, unseen, Adrian stood watching. His chest tightened not just with sorrow for Clara, but with admiration for Naomi. She spoke life into his daughter in a way he had long forgotten how to. Later that afternoon, Adrian invited Naomi for tea in the garden after Clara's nap. The air was crisp, the roses heavy with fragrance. Adrian poured tea into delicate china cups, an unusual gesture for a man who usually left such tasks to Harris. Naomi noticed the tremor in his hand, quickly hidden. "You're different," he said suddenly, his eyes fixed on her across the table. Naomi blinked. "Different, how?" "You don't treat Clara as though she's broken. You don't pity her." His gaze softened. "You remind her she's alive. I've forgotten how to do that." Naomi lowered her cup. The vulnerability in his tone surprised her. This was not the untouchable millionaire the world saw. It was a grieving father, a man carrying too much weight. Quietly, she said, "I know what it feels like to be unseen. People used to look right through me too. Clara deserves someone who truly sees her." Their eyes met hers warm, his searching. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy with something unspoken. That night, Naomi suggested a game after dinner. Charades. Clara squealed with joy as Naomi acted out animals, stumbling dramatically when imitating a giraffe. Adrian, reserved at first, slowly gave in to the absurdity, even attempting an elephant impression that made Clara collapse into giggles. The mansion, once solemn and echoing, now rang with laughter, and Adrian, who had thought joy belonged to the past, found himself laughing so hard he had to wipe tears from his eyes. Naomi caught his gaze across the room. The sound of his laughter, raw and real, tugged at something deep inside her. Later, as Naomi helped Clara up to bed, Adrian followed behind quietly. At the door, Naomi turned to wish him good night. Their hands brushed as he reached for the doorknob. It was the lightest touch yet, both of them stilled, as though the air itself had shifted. Naomi quickly pulled her hand back, her cheeks warming. Adrian cleared his throat, masking a faint smile. "Good night, Naomi," he said softly. "Good night, Mr. Cole," she replied, though her heart was beating too fast for calm formality. In his room, Adrian sat by the window long after midnight. He thought of his late wife, the love they had shared, and the void her absence left. But tonight, another image kept intruding on Naomi's laughter, the gentleness in her touch, the fire in her eyes when she defended Clara's spirit. For the first time in years, he wondered if his heart could belong to someone again, and that terrified him. The sky darkened without warning that evening. Thunder rolled like a drumbeat across the horizon, and soon heavy rain lashed against the tall windows of the Cole estate. Clara, frightened by the storm, clung to Naomi as lightning split the sky. "Shh, little one," Naomi soothed, rocking her gently. "Storms always sound scarier than they are." Adrian entered the room quickly, his usually composed face tense with concern. "Clara, she's fine," Naomi assured him, though her arms tightened around the trembling girl. "But she needs to feel safe." Without hesitation, Adrian crossed the room and lowered himself beside them on the couch. For the first time, Clara felt the warmth of both adults surrounding her, her father on one side, Naomi on the other. "I'll protect you," Adrian whispered, pulling Clara close. "And so will I," Naomi added softly. Clara's breathing steadied, her small voice breaking through the sound of thunder. "I feel safe now." Within moments, she fell asleep nestled between them. Naomi tried to ease Clara onto the cushions so she could stand, but Adrian's hand brushed against hers, holding it in place. "Don't," he said quietly. "Stay, just a little longer." Naomi froze. Their faces were inches apart, the storm outside raging as though nature itself conspired to push them together. She looked into his eyes, expecting the guarded steel of the wealthy businessman. Instead, she saw something raw, something unshielded, loneliness, longing, and a hunger he could no longer mask. "Naomi." His voice was barely audible, broken by emotion. "Since the day you came here, you've done more than care for Clara. You've breathed life back into this house, into me." Her heart hammered. She had never meant to feel this way, forbidden, impossible. Yet here, with his hand holding hers, the air thick with the electricity of the storm, resisting him felt like denying the truth of her own soul. Another flash of lightning lit the room. Adrian's breath caught, his eyes fixed on her lips. Naomi whispered, almost to herself, "This is wrong." But Adrian shook his head, his thumb brushing against her hand. "No, it's the first thing that's felt right in years." The storm roared louder, and in that moment, their restraint shattered. Adrian leaned forward, his lips meeting hers in a desperate, aching kiss, one filled with grief, longing, and the fragile hope of something new. Naomi gasped against him, but her body betrayed her, leaning into his warmth. The kiss was brief, almost startled, yet it burned with more fire than either had expected. They broke apart quickly, both breathless, both shaken by the undeniable spark. Naomi stood abruptly, pressing a hand to her chest. "I should check on Clara." Adrian didn't stop her. But as she disappeared down the hallway, his fingers touched his lips, and for the first time in years, Adrian Cole smiled, not the polite, practiced smile of a billionaire in public, but the unguarded smile of a man who had just remembered what it felt like to be alive. Naomi could hardly sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt Adrian's lips against hers, the warmth of his breath, the tremor in his touch. She sat up in the small guest room, staring at the rain dripping down the glass. "What have I done?" she thought. She had been hired to care for Clara, not to fall into the arms of her widowed employer. And yet, she couldn't erase the truth. That kiss had awakened something she thought was long buried, a tenderness that both terrified and thrilled her. Across the hall, Adrian lay awake too. His mind raced. He had promised himself never to let another woman close, not after losing his wife. His life had been about Clara, business, and little else. But Naomi had entered their world like sunlight breaking through clouds. She wasn't polished or wealthy, yet she carried grace, kindness, and a strength he had almost forgotten existed. Was it loneliness that drove me to her? He wondered. Or something deeper, something real? The next morning, Clara bounded into the dining room, her white cane tapping gently against the polished floors. Naomi followed, carrying a tray. "Daddy!" Clara called. "Naomi made those pancakes I like." Adrian smiled warmly, but when his gaze met Naomi's, the air between them grew taut. She quickly looked away, her cheeks flushed. "Thank you, Naomi," Adrian said, his voice lower than usual. Naomi forced a polite nod. "It's nothing, sir, not sir." "Adrian," he corrected softly. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Clara, oblivious, happily ate her breakfast, chatting about her favorite animals at the zoo. Neither adult dared mention the storm or the kiss, though it lingered like an unspoken secret between them. Later, Naomi excused herself to the garden to clear her mind. The roses were blooming, their fragrance sweet and heavy, yet she felt suffocated by her own emotions. Adrian found her there, his footsteps soft on the gravel path. "Naomi," he began carefully, "about last night." She turned sharply. It was a mistake. The words hit him like a slap. "A mistake?" Her chest rose and fell. "You're grieving. You're lonely. I shouldn't have let it happen." Adrian stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "Is that truly what you believe? What we felt was nothing more than loneliness?" Naomi swallowed hard. She wanted to deny it, to retreat back into the safe walls of professionalism. But her silence betrayed her heart. Just then, Clara's small voice floated through the garden. "Naomi, Daddy, come play. Naomi exhaled in relief, grateful for the interruption. She turned quickly toward the house, leaving Adrian standing amidst the roses, fists clenched in frustration. Clara ran into Naomi's arms, giggling as Naomi lifted her. Naomi, you make Daddy smile again, Clara whispered innocently. Naomi froze, her heart breaking. If only the child knew how complicated those smiles had become. That evening, Naomi resolved to keep her distance. She told herself she would focus only on Clara, nothing more. But Adrian, watching her read bedtime stories to his daughter, knew one thing with certainty. He could no longer imagine their lives without Naomi in them. The kiss may have been fleeting, but it had ignited something unstoppable. And whether Naomi admitted it or not, the storm had already changed them forever. Weeks passed, and though Naomi and Adrian carried on with daily routines, the air between them never returned to normal. The kiss had left its mark, unspoken but undeniable. Then one evening, Adrian's younger sister, Vivienne, paid an unexpected visit. She was everything Naomi was not: elegant, sharp-tongued, draped in jewels that caught the light like fire. Adrian, Vivienne said, kissing his cheek. Her eyes flicked toward Naomi, lingering with cool disdain. And this must be the nanny? Naomi offered a polite smile, but Vivienne's gaze was laced with judgment. Over dinner, Vivienne didn't bother hiding her skepticism. Adrian, really? A black woman like this caring for Clara? Surely the family can afford someone more polished. Naomi lowered her eyes, her appetite gone. Adrian's jaw tightened. Vivienne, Naomi has done more for Clara than anyone since Evelyn passed. She stays. Vivienne's brows arched. It seems you've grown, attached. The implication stung, though Naomi said nothing. Later that night, she overheard Vivienne whispering to Adrian in the hall. She's after your fortune. Can't you see that? Naomi slipped away before hearing Adrian's reply, but the words cut deep. The following days, Naomi kept her distance. She did her duties faithfully, but avoided Adrian's gaze, speaking to him only when necessary. Clara, however, felt the shift. Naomi, why are you sad? She asked one afternoon, tilting her head as though she could see the heaviness Naomi carried. Naomi hugged her gently. I'm not sad, sweetheart, just tired. But Clara wasn't fooled. Children sensed the truths adults tried to hide. That night, as Adrian passed Clara's door, he overheard his daughter whispering her bedtime prayer. God, please don't let Naomi leave. She makes Daddy smile again. Adrian's heart twisted. He knew then he could no longer bury what he felt. The next evening, he found Naomi in the library, reshelving books Clara had pulled down. Naomi, he began, his voice firm yet gentle. She froze, a book clutched in her hand. I won't let Vivienne or anyone else belittle you. You're not here because of money. You're here because Clara needs you. Because... He hesitated, stepping closer. Because I need you. Naomi's breath caught. Adrian. No more pretending, he said, his voice breaking. I haven't felt alive since Evelyn, until you. You've given me hope again, and not just as Clara's nanny. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. And if people say I don't belong here, that I'm not worthy? Adrian's hand cupped her cheek tenderly. Then let them talk. I decide who belongs in my life, Naomi, and you do. Their lips met again, this time slower, deeper, with no storm outside to mask the storm within. But life was not a fairy tale. Soon after, the tabloids caught wind of Adrian's mysterious nanny. Paparazzi swarmed the estate gates, hungry for scandal. Headlines read, Widowed billionaire linked to black nanny. Naomi felt exposed, humiliated. I can't be the reason Clara suffers, or you. I should leave. Adrian refused. No, running only gives them power. We face this together. Clara, overhearing, wrapped her arms around Naomi. Please don't go. You're my family too. Her words, simple yet profound, melted Naomi's last wall of resistance. Adrian called a press conference. Standing proudly with Clara by one hand and Naomi by the other, he addressed the flashing cameras. You want a story? He said firmly. Here it is. This black woman saved my daughter's spirit. She brought joy back into our home, and she reminded me that love doesn't ask about status or color, it simply sees the heart. If that's scandalous, then let it be. The world was stunned. Some criticized him, many admired, but what mattered was that Adrian had chosen the truth. Months later, Clara's laughter echoed through the zoo again. Naomi at her side, Adrian close behind. This time there were no shadows between them, no secrets. Just a family, imperfect but whole. Naomi and Adrian walked together, their fingers intertwined. He leaned close and whispered, Naomi, You didn't just change Clara's life, you changed mine. Naomi smiled, her eyes glistening. And you showed me that love can bloom in the most unexpected places. Clara tugged their hands. Daddy, Naomi, look! The lions! They laughed, running forward together. A picture of healing, of love born from loss, of a family no fortune could ever buy. Sometimes love arrives when we least expect it, through people the world might overlook. True wealth isn't measured in money, but in the courage to open your heart again. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to Colorless Voices, where every story reminds us that humanity, love, and kindness are the treasures that truly matter.